The outlook in 2012 still remains cautious, I would say, and that's in line with what the Institute of Chartered Accountants' latest business confidence monitor showed, where confidence was still at a very low level but didn't decline further from where it had fallen markedly in the final quarter of 2011. So it's a mood of cautious optimism because quite a few of the indicators have improved through the early part of 2012, and certainly things haven't fallen off a cliff had we been in a deep recession like we were in 2008-9. And so I am hopeful that we may well avoid a technical recession following the contraction of the economy in the final quarter of last year, but I wouldn't hold out for really robust growth yet because there's still quite a few headwinds for the UK. There is a strong concern around managing the UK's public finances, which is why the rating agencies are watching the UK very carefully, and we're talking about negative outlooks and so on. But the key thing is the government is taking action on it and does look like it will come in ahead of its borrowing target this year. That is around 10 billion less than they expected on public borrowing through 2011-12. But that said, there is still a key point for the UK, and that is that growth is very weak. And whilst we've seen some improvement lately, unless growth can really pick up, we're going to struggle to bring down that burden of debt because the tax revenue is just not going to come in. So we do need to see an improved growth outlook before we can start being more comfortable about the long-term position of the public finances. Well, I think the Chancellor faces, as ever, dilemmas. I think it is unlikely that he will alter his course. He set that out. Ultimately, it was June 2010, and then the spending review in 2010, where he really made the big decisions to cut government spending by as much as he did, and then actually he had to push those spending cuts out into the next Parliament in the most recent pre-budget statement, or the autumn statement in November 2011. And that's because of the weak growth outlook and the fact that it's going to take a significant amount of time to bring down the deficit. So I can't see him changing his overall fiscal policy as such. But what I can see is measures to help with growth and trying to stimulate and help consumers that are really having a tough time perhaps, and also businesses, trying to get them to invest, trying to get them to push on for growth. So we may see some small fiddles from the Chancellor to try and help out those that have been particularly squeezed by the real income squeeze on the consumer front, and perhaps businesses that need more incentives to invest and want more clarity over their tax liabilities over the coming years. We may yet see further cuts in investment allowance, or we may yet see action on, say, national insurance or income tax, and he may reconsider the tax rate that he did on the North Sea, which actually has had quite a negative effect on output of oil and gas in the North Sea. So he may reconsider the tax rate he did there, which probably didn't have great consequences in terms of its impact on the economy overall. So, but it remains to be seen. These things are always kept secret, and we haven't had that many leaks yet. There's been talks of cutting the allowances for the lower income households, so effectively an income tax cut of sorts. But there haven't been a great deal of big policy announcements teed up by the government as such. So it still remains quite uncertain at this stage. London's a real powerhouse of the UK economy and has a huge advantage as a very advantageous place to do business. I mean, there's simple geography of it being in between, say, North America and South America and Asia in terms of time zones helps it as a marketplace. And it's very plugged into the Eurozone, which has perhaps become more of a liability than a real asset lately, but certainly it's in a good position geographically, and it has the cluster of very highly skilled workforce who like living in London, and there's a lot of highly skilled people that work in the city. So it does have a lot of things going for it, but then there are clearly challenges, especially from the east, where we see rising financial centres. We see the global centre of economic gravity shifting east and south as places like China become increasingly important, and we've got financial centres like Singapore and Hong Kong really surging on. So there are clearly challenges for London to maintain its prominence in the global economy. So the government does need to do all it can to safeguard that. I think for small businesses it's still fundamentally about the uncertainty over the economic outlook. If you look at the FSB Voice of Small Business survey, close to 70% of businesses said that domestic economy was one of their greatest concerns. So it's clearly all the gloom we've had around the economy, the fact that the government's cutting back, the fact that consumers have had their real incomes cut for, well, it's likely to be 3 years in a row because inflation's outpacing earnings growth. That means that domestic demand is likely to be quite weak. I think businesses are still worried about that. So hopefully that situation is going to start improving as consumers feel less of a squeeze this year, and export demand hopefully is holding up with a weak sterling. But it is still a tough outlook for small businesses, but certainly sentiment has improved significantly lately. What can the government do to help them? Well, maybe tax holidays on hiring, new hiring through 2012-13 financial year, or similar such policies to try and help them grow. But I think what you really need to do is have structural changes rather than temporary policies. So committing to doing something like a tax cut over a medium term, rather than introducing a tax cut which lasts a year and then reversing it. I think what the business community really wants is certainty and clarity over the future direction of policy.